I think the other mistake perhaps that we make, or the short-sightedness that we have in the early stages, is not realizing that we're actually ready for the next step. Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm excited about this episode. I'm always excited about every episode, so that gets boring. But no, I really am excited about it. Why? Because I've got a law firm owner for you. And, so many times we have vendors, we have experts, we have, people who are out there touting their own message. But today we've got Margeaux Thomas. Margeaux Thomas is a law firm owner in the Virginia area. She's building a practice that is a litigation firm, and she's experienced a level of success, so we can all learn from her success. She also has challenges, and hopefully we'll get to dive into some of those successes, some of those challenges in this interview. I love having firm owners on the show because it's so real, right? It's relatable to everybody that's listening. So really excited about this conversation. Margeaux has represented individuals and small businesses in complex commercial and real estate litigation and class action cases at the trial and appellate level throughout Virginia, Maryland, and the DC area. Margeaux specializes in commercial landlord-tenant disputes, business partnership disputes, and contract disputes. There's also a bunch of accolades in her bio that I'm skipping, but we'll have that in the show notes, specifically, her super lawyer status and association with various bar associations and all that stuff. Margeaux, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. And let's just kick this off with the really easy one. Tell us a little bit about your backstory. How did you become a lawyer? How did you decide to start your own firm? What did that look like for you in the early stages? And then we'll dive into specifics.
So I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. And
I was born in Cleveland too.
No way. I didn't know
yes
that.
Way. Moved out when I was a year. But yes, I was born there.
Yeah. Well, I'm still very connected. A lot of my family still lives in Cleveland, and I make it back there frequently. So I grew up in Cleveland, and I wanted to get away from Cleveland and go to a bigger city. I ended up coming out into the DMV for law school and stayed out here after that. My dad was a teacher, and education was a very big part of my childhood. I was that kid who went to school year round, despite the fact he didn't believe in summer vacation or summer slide, as they call it. So education was always a big part of it. And I love education. I liked school. I loved law school. I liked the intellectual challenge of it. And I ended up graduating and going to a firm and enjoyed that a lot, but always thought that there was something else out there. And I had a lot of time to think about that because I got pregnant with twins and was on bed rest for a significant amount of time. And, I realized during that downtime that was kind of forced upon me that opening a firm might be the next step. And when my twins turned 2, I opened this firm, and we've been here 8 years.
Wow. So you've got twin 8-year-olds.
They are
10-year-olds. 10-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm the numbers guy, right? And I screwed that one up.
Yeah.
Twin 10-year-olds. Wow, that's really cool. And do you have any other kids?
Yes, I have a 6-year-old daughter.
Okay. So we both have princesses. Mine just turned 7. And I've got my son is turning 9. I have 7, but 3 of them are grown, married, on their own life journey now. And then we've got 4 at home, starting with the almost 9-year-old, and then Miss Princess herself. 3 boys, 1 girl in the house right now. So 9-year-old, 7-year-old, almost 3-year-old, and 10-month-old. So all the boys will be incrementing in age in end of September, beginning of October. But it is a full household, a lively household, and I can only imagine yours. But what's interesting is that, so many moms, dads too, but I'm going to pick on the moms for a second. So many moms find that deciding to be a mom, deciding to have kids, raise kids has been an impediment to their career, right? Like it's a barrier. It keeps their salaries lower. It, you know, they're viewed differently in the workplace. It's a real challenge and a real problem. But you made a choice, you know, when you were going through this process and you decided to set your own path. Looking back, how do you feel about the choice that you made, and would you choose to do it differently given a do-over, or are you really thrilled with exactly the way it went?
I think I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and I think it was to the detriment of my family and children because when I started this firm and my kids were 2, it took way more time than I could have possibly imagined. It all seemed much easier on paper than in practice. And I spent many nights. I mean, my day would be work and then kids, and then I would go back to work until midnight. And you just can't sustain that over time. And that doesn't allow you to be fully present for the time you're with your children because you're tired, because you're working weekends and late nights. And I think it took away from a lot of years when they were developing because, I was exhausted, but, I was keeping it all together, but it put a lot of strain on my relationships, and I had to shift because that just wasn't sustainable. And now I believe that rest is as important as work, but at that time I didn't. And I glean a lot of value from both my career and my family life. So I like both. I need both in order to have balance. When I was on maternity leave with my twins and they were premature, so it was a very difficult time. I just always felt like they were in this world sooner than they were ready to be, and they were very, they didn't sleep. They were very uncomfortable. They were crying. I was on edge. It's a very difficult time. When I got back to work, like it kind of balanced out a little bit for me. And so I know that about myself. I need that balance between both of them because they both have a big part of my personality is based upon these two elements.
Okay, there are listeners to this show right now who are doing what you did 8 years ago, right now. They're working at night, they're working on the weekend, they're sacrificing their own personal well-being and or time with their family for the name and sake of growing their law firm. You're a lot smarter now than you were 8 years ago. Going back to that person, think of yourself 8 years ago. Think of our listener who's in that boat right now. What is one thing that you wish you knew then that had you implemented could have drastically changed your experience during that time?
That's a great question. I just don't think I gave enough thought to what time means and how finite it is and what I want my children to remember when they grow up, right? I just don't want them, I want them to have a recollection of me being there, right? And not at work. And I think that for lawyers, we lean towards work. I mean, that's our dynamic. The billable hour is structured upon it. Success at a law firm is built around you dedicating a lot of your time to being at work. And that mindset just kind of had to shift. And, I felt like if I didn't bill a certain number of hours, I wasn't productive. And, I wanted the law firm to succeed at times. And I could not see what effect that was having as far as my time on other things that were very important to me. So, I'm not sure if somebody could have told me that at that time and I would have been able to hear that. But reflecting back on it now, I can see the sacrifices that were made, and I'm not sure I needed to make those type of sacrifices to be in this position. But, you live and you learn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm relating so much to everything that you're sharing. Even myself, I mean, that was a period of time that I was a single dad. And people who, it's not just the mom, right? Like I got really offended, like when the school had, mother-daughter day or something like that. And I had 3 daughters, right? And I was excluded, even though I was the only parent in their life at the time, right? Um, I don't want to single out motherhood here. I want to be really careful that, I'm talking to any parent. I'm talking to, if you're a nurturing parent, if you're present in your kids' lives or want to be, right? There's a difference between presence and wanting to be present. I think it's really important to understand that you have a choice to make. And it doesn't feel like a choice when we're going through it. And I think that's what you were trying to articulate when you just responded is, you know, I was wired to work, so I just worked every minute I had, not realizing that I didn't have as many minutes as I thought I did, right? Um, there's a rule we call it Parkinson's law, and I'm a profit first professional. Profit first, the whole profit first system is built around Parkinson's law. But basically, Parkinson's law states that given a finite resource, our demand for consumption of that resource is going to expand to the resource available to us. Now, we use that in profit first around money, but in time management, it's used around this idea that if I give myself 18 hours in the day, I'm going to use 18 hours in the day. But if I only give myself 8 or 10, I'm going to find a way to complete what I need to complete in those 10 hours. So much of having a life and having balance is around setting boundaries and not around, oh, I need to work less, or I need, like, none of those things are true. All you need to do is just be really rigid about the schedule you're allowing yourself. If you don't allow yourself to go and do work at night, what's going to happen is that you're going to be forced to find another way to get it done, which might mean you work more efficiently. It might mean that you decide to hire an international VA who's really inexpensive to offload some of the work to, that you probably should have done on day one, but because you gave yourself 18 hours, didn't do. But had you given yourself 10 or 8, you might have been forced to do that really early on, which could have completely changed your life. So I think for somebody listening who's in those early stages, just remember this. It's your choice. You get to decide. Nobody's forcing you to work those hours. And if you choose to work less hours, it doesn't mean less money or income for your family or less results for you and your business. It means better decisions in the operations of your business.
Yeah. I think that's the bottom line that I didn't appreciate at that time.
Yeah.
And I did become more efficient when I stopped working weekends, and I wasn't as tired. And I got more done during the peak hours of the day, but I didn't understand that that would be the consequence of less time.
Yeah.
Working.
And I mean, I know from the green room conversation that we had, I love the fact that you have support staff built in right now, right? Like, you have a team. You've got a couple of attorneys, you've got support staff. You've built that out. And I think the thing that the other mistake perhaps that we make, or the short-sightedness that we have in the early stages, is not realizing that we're actually ready for the next step. Like, we think that we're only going to be ready to hire somebody when we have enough revenue to pay for that, right? And there, I mean, let's be real. In the early stages, there's never extra revenue, right? Like, any extra dollars, you're either trying to put back into the business or you're taking it home, right? So if you're measuring from the current status, the current yardstick, you're always going to get a result that says, hey, I'm not ready yet. But if you recognize that, hey, if I put an international VA onto my team, and it's just me and the international VA, right? Like, it doesn't need, you don't need a whole team. And I could offload, even if I could offload 10 hours a week into a 40-hour work week for the international VA, right? Like, they're so inefficient. They don't understand. Like, if I give them 40 hours worth of work, it's only going to save me 10 hours. What is 10 hours worth to you? I mean, let's just talk about the billable hour, right? Like, how much you charge per hour, or how much did you charge per hour back then?
$325.
So 10 hours a week times 325, that's $3,250 a week. That's of potential billables you could be doing by offloading to a 40-hour a week VA who's costing you $2,000 a month The problem is that we don't see the end result. Like we can't even think 90 days into the future. We're just in the here and now saying, oh, how can I absorb a $2,000 a month expense? And it could actually be less than 2,000 a month. Just to share a couple of resources. So if you need to bring that person on, by the way, anybody who joins our elite coaching program, like the very first thing on day one, if you're by yourself, my recommendation is go out and hire a VA today. Like that is my absolute I don't need to see in your business. I don't need to know what stage you're at, because I think that when you open your doors, like the very first thing you should do when you decide to start a law firm is hire a VA. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to know, like, go do it. So if you don't have one, you want to know where to get one, we have two great partners we work with. One is Get Staffed Up. You can go to profitwithlaw.com/get staffed up, get a special discount for going through that link. But basically, they will manage that VA for you. They'll be the HR department. You pay them approximately $2,000 a month, depending on what you're getting, and you're going to get a full-time employee. We also have Skybreaker. Skybreaker is Joey Vitale. He's one of our coaches on our staff. He has a service that's more of like a recruiting service for international VAs. You can go to profitwithlaw.com/GVA. I think it's global vetted VAs. I think that he charges something like $2,500 to find the VA for you, but then you hire them directly. Generally, they start at about $6 an hour. So that's, if you could do math, it's about $1,000 a month. So if you're really looking to get by on the cheap, you can totally, go that route. But that alone is a game changer for any business that's starting out. Just starting that delegation muscle, starting to give stuff to somebody else to do. I mean, the entire business of law is basically buying other people's time and reselling it. Like that's what you do. It's not about you, the attorney. It's about the staff that you're building and providing a delivery to a client that is using the resources that you have on staff. So your people are your inventory. Start growing your inventory right away. Okay, Margeaux, I went off on a tangent. Back to you. So you're here today, 8 years later, a couple of attorneys, support staff. What do you think were your top 3 best decisions in the last 8 years? Like if you're looking back and you're saying, wow, that was a good one.
It was definitely hiring early, which you just talked about. I definitely was in the mindset that I didn't have the money. I was too new. I didn't know how to train. I had never had that in a law firm. I was never an employer. I didn't know what that looked like. So that was great. I mean, as soon as I got someone in the door, I could feel like a relief. And it was the first hire I made ended up being golden. Like he was very good. He had a great work ethic. He made relationships with people. I mean, he expanded, I think you've called it before, the attorney expander. He expanded my growth substantially. And I never could have imagined what impact I would have had at the time I made that decision. That was a good one. I think business coaching was a good one. Just talking and being around other attorneys who were as motivated to also grow their firm was, and it had a lot had to do with mindset. I had never talked about or thought about mindset as much as when I was in a group of other attorneys who wanted to grow their firms. And it didn't matter what type of firm they had or what stage they were in. There were a lot of commonalities, and they gave me a lot of information that I implemented that just helped me a lot. One of my weaknesses was the first hire was great, and I thought that would just repeat itself easily. I soon learned that I was terrible at figuring out who would be a good fit. That person just kind of fell into my lap and it worked. But, after that, I had bad hire after bad hire after bad hire, and it cost me money and time and resources and frustration. I wasn't firing them soon enough. It was just a nightmare. And then somebody I knew just said, look, this is a great recruiter and they can help you with this. And I would sit in the interviews with her, and she would ask the questions, listen to the answers, evaluate the answers, and talk to me about it afterwards. And I got a whole new understanding of what is a good fit. And I'm listening for the wrong stuff for a long time. People who I like who weren't good fits. So hiring a recruiter was huge for me. hiring early staff was good for me, and joining, being a part of a mastermind or some kind of coaching group was probably the three best decisions I made over the last 8 years.
Awesome. I love all three of them. Um,
Mhm.
and hiring early, I just got off my soapbox on that one. I don't think I need to repeat it. The only thing I will say is, I did a presentation at the Law Firm Growth Summit, about, skipping 5 years of growth and compacting it into one. And essentially, the idea of that talk was you need to become an investor in your firm and you need to put up the capital to get the result. And a lot of most law firm owners, try to grow into the next level. And the problem with that is it's almost impossible to do because, I mean, Clio did a study on solo productivity, and solo law firm owners bill an average of 2.1 hours per day and collect an average of 1.8 hours per day. If you're operating at a third of what an attorney on your staff can do, how is it possible that you'll have enough revenue just from your own efforts to hire an attorney? Right? It's almost an impossibility, which means that you're either trying to squirrel away every penny you can, or you are, um, or you're rolling the dice without the funds and bringing somebody on and hoping it's going to work, or you get the capital. Right? So I did a talk about basically using the U.S. banking system and getting some capital in the door, to basically fuel your growth. But I think the concept or the idea of recognizing that you as an attorney is not the best role for you, unless that's where you want to be, and then you hire a CEO to run the business. But you have to make a choice. Are you a CEO or not? And if you are, then you have to hire an associate. You can't be the attorney that's trying to grow the business because you're limited one third the capacity, which means
You
that,
know,
yeah, go ahead.
something else I struggled with hiring was I hired a lot of contract attorneys, and there's so much out there about, resources about contract attorneys and how this can work, and you could scale your firm, and it never really worked for me because I wanted to be able to hand off a case and say, run with this and do the depositions and do these things and not give piecemeal assignments to different people. But that gave me a sense of security because I'm only paying you for so many hours, and I think that held me back for a long time because I wasn't really ready to invest in, like, I'm going to pay this person six figures a year and I'm going to have to figure out how to pay them no matter what. And I just was stuck on how am I ever going to afford that? And, you know, the, I, I'm sure people are able to build their firm on contract attorneys. I just wasn't able to figure that out. And I think that when I was able to get over the mental hurdle of being able to afford somebody who's full time working on cases, running with them, I didn't have to be involved in every email with the client. And, it just freed up so much of my time that I was able to focus on other things.
Yeah, and I think you're making a really good point because, the I don't know that you can build your firm on contract attorneys. I don't know that that's true or accurate. I think there's a place for it. I think that when you're at peak capacity at any stage, right? So it doesn't have to be you. Like, you have 4 attorneys on staff and you're fully booked. You can't take another client without somebody's quality of work suffering. You don't know if it's a fluke. You don't know if are we permanently busy, or are we just busy for the next 60 days? And you don't want to go out and just run out and hire somebody. So you bring in a contract attorney for that overflow during that busy period while you figure out, is this growth here to stay? But then you bring somebody on. So contract attorneys are a great filler for overflow. I don't believe that contract attorneys are a growth tool. I agree with you 100%. If you're growing your firm, put a full-time person in place. Do the legwork to find that person. You can fill the space with a contract attorney until you find that person, but ultimately, it's going to hold you back if you're trying to just do everything with contract attorney work. I mean, first of all, the math doesn't even make sense at some point. I think the other thing that you talked about, which is like, hey, I had to wrap my head around paying somebody $100,000+ a year. We get this idea that, like, I have to have $120,000 in the bank because I'm hiring somebody who I'm paying $120,000 to. But if you hire somebody with 5 years of experience, how long after you hire them would you expect them to be billing hours? I'm not even talking about a full day, just billing a couple hours a day. 6 weeks? Probably nothing
Sooner
more
than
than
that.
that, right? If they're
Yeah,
coming with
sooner than that.
experience, it's just a matter of learning our systems and learning how we like to do things and then going and doing some work, right? So you're only carrying $10,000 a month for 6 weeks at 2 hours a day. They should be covering their salary.
Yeah, but I think the hurdle is believing that you're going to be able to fill their plate with enough work to generate that revenue, which we all are concerned about. And I liked your closet analogy about nobody has any empty closets. Like you'll find a way to generate the work, but capacity precedes growth. So you're not going to be able to generate that work if you don't lean into the capacity.
Right. And you talked about how important understanding mindset is. And I think that this is probably the thing that really needs understanding. Because you talked about, right? Like you have to have capacity, but where I think it becomes really hard to wrap our heads around is the fact that when you don't have the capacity, subconsciously, you're doing things to impede your growth. You're going to not call somebody back during the sales cycle. Why are you doing that? You know that you need to call them back if you want to make the sale, right? Why would you push off a sales call? Because you know you don't have capacity to serve them. So you're like, and you're not doing it consciously, you're doing it subconsciously. But what's happening behind the scenes in your brain is your brain is telling you, hey, you're about to blow up your firm if you take this client. Why don't you just not call them back and then they'll go away? And you don't have to tell them you're full and you can't take them. And they don't have to make a tough decision not to use you. They just never heard back from you. So that's the end of that. And that's the kind of thing that's happening day in, day out with every decision you're making. I'm not going to invest more in my marketing. I have more leads I know what to do with, right? So there's an opportunity to invest more in your marketing, but you don't know what that is because you don't have the capacity for it. All of the things that you need to do to grow you're being held back because you don't have somebody to fill their plate. So it's more than just, hey, I got to fill their plate. It's understanding that when I put them there, their plate will get filled on its own. It's just going to happen because everything that I know I need to do, I can finally do. The other thing is I just said 2 hours a day, right? 10 hours a week. If you're working at full capacity yourself and you're not billing more than 4 hours a day, right? Like a solo, I said on average is billing 2 hours a day. So if you're doing anything more than two, you're already above what any solo would do. Just give them your work. Give them your legal work because then they're covering their salary and creates capacity for you to go close more business, get more clients. In a litigation firm, you probably have a backlog of work. You probably have stuff that you're just pushing off because you're too busy today with the cases that are in court tomorrow. Just get out of the backlog. For the first 6 weeks, have them do work that could wait, but it could also be done right now. And in that 6-week time frame, go get a new client, go get 2 new clients. That stuff's going to happen. So you almost don't even need capital to grow your firm if you're at capacity. It's really just understanding those numbers and making a decision to just go with it. Bring somebody on. Now, I don't encourage you to do that. Like, I think you should have a runway. You should have cash in the bank, which is why you either should have savings or you should have excess cash flow, or you should have a line of credit or some sort of finance vehicle that you have available to you so you can carry them if you need to. Have that insurance policy. But the reality is if you do a good job in the hiring process, when you bring them on, and don't hire a newbie, please. Like when you have 10 attorneys on staff, when you have 10 attorneys on staff and you're bored and you want a project, hire a brand new attorney. Hire an attorney with 5 years of experience in the wrong practice area and teach them your practice area. Mentor somebody. But when you're hiring an associate because you want to grow the business, because you're too busy, because you want, like, that's the next step, bring somebody in with experience. The small amount of extra that you're going to pay for the experience is going to make them productive for you in 6 weeks instead of 3 to 6 months. You don't want to carry a salary for for half a year. Bring in somebody with experience.
Yeah.
And the third thing that you shared was coaching. I'm a coach, so I'm going to tell you about, at Profit with Law, we have the elite coaching program. We help law firm owners go from solo to 1 to 2 million in that coaching program. It's very specific for that space. There's a lot of programs out there. We specifically help you with getting that capital that you need to grow your firm, getting past those mindset issues, and actually creating a plan and executing on the plan. If you want to learn more about it, go to profitwithlaw.com/elite. But I host the Law Firm Growth Summit. I bring 50 speakers on stage, of which 30 of them are also coaches. There's a lot of coaches out there for very different areas, practice areas, stages of business. Have somebody in your corner. It should be somebody that you resonate with. It should be somebody you look up to, is somebody that you want to mentor you, and obviously somebody who can help you produce results. But having that support is going to exponentially increase your success because it just gets you out of your own way. So much of what we do is just stopping ourselves from success. If somebody else could just shine a light back on us, we already know the answers of what we need to do. We just need somebody to just kind of like bring it to the front. Yeah, I know I need to hire somebody. Okay, so go do it. Right? Margeaux, we talked about your 3 best decisions. We talked about what it was like early on. What about right now? Let's first talk about the positive side of it. How is your life right now? I mean, you have people on staff, they're doing the work. Obviously, you have challenges in your firm, which, I do want to get to and talk about. But how is your life right now compared to what it was back then?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, I have really leaned into, I swim a lot, and competitive swimming and open water swimming, and I spend a lot of time on that aspect. And it helps me, focus and be more present in my job and think about decisions that need to be made. And, then I didn't have any hobbies and I didn't have any outlets at that point. So I'm grateful that I have an opportunity to do something that I love to do every single day, because I have the time to do that now. So I'm happy about that. But, it's stressful. When it's one, you're worried about your own mortgage. When you're 5 people, you're worried about other people and your ability to, keep it all afloat. And there's a lot of different elements and pieces. And one of the most difficult pieces for me is other, people's personality types, and, making culture and a fit, and people feel like this is something they want to be a part of and grow with. I mean, that's a leadership principle, and I've never been in any leadership. They don't teach that in law school. So, just making sure that people are happy and they feel fulfilled in their jobs is a particularly difficult piece for me, because I'm just kind of like put my head down and get it done kind of person, but everybody's not like that. And you have to, understand that there are other motivating factors that people have, and address those. So I have to be more conscious of that. And, that's difficult for me. And, cases still keep me up at night. I'm still involved in, overseeing a lot of things, and delegating is always going to be difficult because, it's not, as lawyers, I think, we have a specific way of doing things and we believe that way is right. And it's hard to see, delegation. Sometimes somebody could do it 90% of the way and get to the same result, and just accepting that it's not going to be 100% every time is most of my challenges are mindset, as you can see, just shifting the mindset to understanding that this will be okay and this will work out. and just having some faith in
There's a lot of value in being able to just talk about your challenges. Like when you speak it out to somebody else, sometimes the answer becomes obvious, and you were like grappling with it for days, and then you just have a conversation with somebody, you explain the challenge, and you're like, wait a second, it sounds so stupid, right? Like the answer is obvious. So it's really important to have a network, people that you can talk to, whether it's in a mastermind, whether you're in a coaching program, or somewhere where you get to speak about those challenges, because uh, half the battle is just acknowledging them. And then it's just a matter to overcome them is actually easier than just, recognizing that you have that challenge. Um, looking at those challenges, I mean, you brought up delegation. I'll just say this. There's a great book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I don't know if you read it. If not, you should definitely pick it up and add it to your very, very soon to read reading list. She does a really awesome job of helping you communicate feedback to your staff. It is a major challenge, especially for new leaders, to recognize and understand that criticism is actually really, really good for your team. And we're afraid to give it because we're afraid that they're going to be insulted, or they're going to, feel like we're picking on them, or we don't like their work. The problem is that what's the alternative? The alternative is accepting it the way it is, or taking it at that 90% mark, and then you take it over the finish line. If you keep doing that for somebody, guess what's going to happen after 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? You're going to despise that person. That person is just a pain in the neck. They're creating more work for you, and you're going to fire them. Or you're just going to have, tough encounters at the workplace where it all could have been avoided if you really liked them. But you have got all this pent up, what's the word I'm looking for? When you build up being upset with somebody.
resentment.
Yes, thank you.
Resentment.
Yes. So you have all this resentment built up, and you're going to take it out on them. Whereas if you had critiqued their work and given them the opportunity to make it better, then that's uncomfortable for 1 or 2 times, but hopefully they take your critique, they make it better, and now they're getting it over the finish line. Now they're producing the work at the level that you want. But how do you communicate that? So it's an awesome book. She was I think the director of HR at Google or something like that. She definitely has the experience, and I recommend the book all the time for leaders who are struggling with that, because it is probably one of the best things you can master as you're growing your staff, as you're bringing people onto your firm. To set the stage for success is not just to have the people in place, but to have them actually doing the work. And there's a big difference between having somebody you can delegate tasks to and having somebody that you can delegate responsibility to. And I think that that's the stages of growth. Is first I bring on taskmasters, and then I bring on leaders, people who can own responsibility. And that's the ultimate goal. Is I want to have a bunch of players on my team who own responsibility, so that I don't have to worry about it. So things are able to run on their own. And that's really, like, if we think about growth, you think 5 years down the road, what does my firm look like? If you've got multiple attorneys on staff, if you've got, if you think to the future, you've got 20 people on staff, are you going to be managing the lowest level of those 20 people? You'll know their name. You'll see them in meetings, right? But you're not going to have anything to do with them. Who's going to manage them? That you have to be able to delegate responsibility at some point. So you have to figure out how to delegate responsibility. That is like the ultimate success of crossing that barrier. It's really like the difference between the 2 million and 10 million, right? Like, what happens after 2 million in revenue? 2 million in revenue, you can get there with 1 to 2 attorneys on staff. They might have a paralegal, 2 paralegals, 2 legal assistants. You still have Small team, 6 people. You have a receptionist, office manager, whatever it is. It's tiny, but it's a nice business, right? 2 million. I mean, if you're at a 30% profit margin, you're earning $600,000 a year. But what's the next step? Where does it go from there? Up until then, everything relied on you. The barrier, the next to take that next leap to the next level of growth, putting in another team of 2 attorneys, 2 paralegals, like another 6 people. Now you need a layer of management. Now you need somebody who's going to own responsibility. But if you haven't figured out how to delegate that responsibility, you're not ready. So when we're growing our team early on, that is the learning grounds, right? That's the education for us to really step up as a leader. Don't just, I mean, when you start, delegate tasks. Nothing wrong with that. Oversee that. But then start practicing just giving something without them needing to check in with you when it's done. You do the oversight a couple of times, get comfortable with it, and let them run. And then you start to develop the next stage of leaders for your team. Margeaux, we're out of time. It's a great conversation, and I feel like there's so much more for us to dive into, but I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your successes, your experience. Kudos to you. I mean, really, like, to start your firm after having twins, little babies running around, 2 years old. I mean, that's like the toughest age. You're constantly chasing after them. They're getting into all the things they shouldn't be getting into, and you decided to start a firm. So I mean, it's just incredible what you've been able to do over the last 8 years. And, I think that there's so much more available to you. You're, you're on the right track. You shared some really great things with our listeners, and I think that there's a lot of people who are going to take away some really golden nuggets from this episode. So I appreciate you coming on here, taking the time to share your story and your experience. As we wrap it up, one parting piece of advice or wisdom for our listeners, and then if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
One parting piece of advice. I'm currently reading Second in Command. I think it's a really good book, so that's my tip. And you can reach me. We're all over LinkedIn. That's our main marketing platform. So you can see lots of updates about the firm, my life, swimming, everything that we love on LinkedIn. Our website is thomaslawplc.com.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. We will link all that up in the show notes. Show notes should be in your podcast player in the description, as well as on profitwithlaw.com. We've got you covered on all of that, so don't worry about needing to write anything down. We appreciate you here as a listener. Just know we're here every Thursday with a brand new episode. Make sure you hit the subscribe button in your podcast player so that you know when our episode gets released. And if you're enjoying the show, we would love a rating or review on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Yeah, those ratings and reviews really help people decide whether they should come and pay attention to our show, listen to us. So there's a lot of value to the general law firm owner population when you leave a review. It's not just about leaving a review for us. And if you hate the show, leave a 1 or 2 star review. I'm not asking for 5 stars. I just want the review. Hopefully you love it. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully we earned 5 stars, but be honest, share your opinion. There's a lot of places that people can go for their material. People can go to learn. And we'd love to be one of those go-to places for law firm owners, especially in early stages of growth, to come and glean a ton of insight from our guests. Thank you so much. We will see you next Thursday as we release our very next episode. Take care.